Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. More Hail Caesar here as we work our way through the last few remaining factions. So today, guys, we're going to be taking a look at the early Russian list, which is considered roughly mid-11th through the 13th centuries. And before we really get in too deep, though, did want to mention anyone who's looking to pick up anything from Warlord, if you check out the pinned comment, guys, there's a link there. If you pick up anything via that actually helps out the channel a little bit for those who want to do a little bit of extra support. But let's jump in with this list here. So we've got a lot of things going on as far as how we can organize the army, which will then kind of, certainly influence what we take and in what quantity. So it is a balanced list in the sense that we have to have minimum requirements of cavalry and infantry. How deep we want to go on each side is, of course, up to us. We can certainly skew it one way or the other or go more or less 50-50. So basically, at least a quarter in the list has to be of those two unit types, but there's some subgroups here as well. So Russian nobles have to be 50% of the cavalry. So they must be Russian noble heavy cavalry. Doesn't include Russians combined with Turkic light cavalry. So something to keep in mind there. Now, on the infantry side, at least half of the non-skirmish infantry must be heavy and or medium infantry town militia. And that's an interesting combination in and of itself, right? Potentially heavy militia, right? We don't see that, or have not seen that really. Of which, let's see here, of which at least half has to carry either spears or javelins, or spears, javelins, and bows, and not long spears or axes. So a lot of little specifics there as far as even equipment type within that. And then divisions is normal here. You see that a lot. Skirmishers per division, 25% of infantry. We've seen a lot with 50% here over the last few videos. But let's jump in. It's not an overly long list, but there is still a fair bit of stuff going on here with all the different units. So let's walk through and see what we get here. We have town militia heavy infantry with spears or javelins. Just a good, solid, standard heavy infantry unit, right? No, nothing special there. No special rules. Typical points. Now we could, and this is an interesting thing, right? We could pay extra to include bowmen amongst the rear ranks of the militia with spears or javelins, which for 2 more points, we're still under 30 for a heavy unit, which is great. And that's actually going to give us 2 for long range. So I always love, when we get these like multi-use units, right? We're not pigeonholing it into necessarily, oh, this unit can only do this or that. This unit can do a little bit of everything. Heavy infantry is, well, it's heavy infantry. It does what it does. It's going to be there to stick in the fight, but we can also pepper the opponent with some long-range shooting as we advance or wait for them to come to us, and hopefully cause a little bit of damage before the fighting does start. Now we also get town militia heavy infantry with long spears, all right, starting at 29 points. But similarly, we can include bowmen there, so another 2-point upgrade. We see the difference there as well. But again, here the big difference, of course, is just the long spear ability versus just the regular spear. So when we get into special equipment, just worth differentiating there. But good to have different options there between those. And again, a little bit of a cost savings if we go with the first unit. One last one, though. We can have town militia heavy infantry with double-handed axes. And these guys are pretty damn nasty. 28 points and 2 for the upgrade, right? Again, we have another option of going with bows. And it might be worth just taking a little bit of everything. But the cool thing here, which makes these guys just nasty, and again, we don't even need any special rules amongst these units. They're already just good enough. But the double-handed axes is going to give us a massive clash of 9, which we typically see, only with like heavy cavalry. So just to have that in an infantry unit and be able to take multiples of those is pretty nasty in and of itself. And again, we could, if we pay the option for the bows too, right, we're going to hopefully cause some damage before the fighting starts, and then hopefully just roll really well with that initial round of fighting. We then have a sort of a downgrade, right? When we get essentially more town militia. That's really just like the large extent of the infantry here, town militia. But now we're going down to medium infantry levels, which is a pretty steep discount, right? 23 points stock. We can go the long spear upgrade for +3, and if we want bows, yet again, another +2 or some combination of that. So all in all, so far, the force is really, before we even get like dedicated shooting units, the whole force really could also be engaging at long range, which is pretty cool. Then if we wanted to, just for, again, it's another steep discount here, We could reduction to make town militia medium infantry, quote unquote militia. So yeah, so I was kind of wondering about how they would actually handle that. So here we're getting the downgrade and getting the actual militia special rule, which really is going to represent them being, well, truly militia. It's kind of curious that they don't have that for the other infantry here. So they're kind of skating by with being just really good regular infantry and not having to uh, uh, have the militia special rule to deal with. Although again, you're getting a solid discount for that too. So interesting stuff there. But that's really going to be, again, like the rabble, really. And we get into that more here with the peasant militia. Now we're down to light infantry with, these are war bands, though, but with spears. Again, here you're dealing with militia and levy, militia and levy, but 14 points, very, very cheap. And if we wanted to add bowmen, we can bring that back up to 16. But really, we don't need to spend the points on that. If we're taking these, we're basically just taking blocks of cannon fodder, little things to get in the way of the opponent just to stop them maybe, or just redirect them into other areas. So we're not going to expect much out of them. So moving on, though, we do get a actually dedicated infantry bowman unit here. Keyword, they're not just like skirmishers and just absolutely dreadful at fighting. They're still considered light infantry, although still another step down with 4-4 and clash and sustain. But in a pinch, throwing those 4 dice sometimes can maybe cause some damage. But this is our true dedicated long range unit with a massive 3 for the long range and just a solid 20 points there. So we definitely want to bring some of that. We get a very minimal skirmisher package here. No javelins. Here's actually skirmishers with bows, but yet again, more long range. So really, again, if we want to, the whole army so far can engage at long range, which is pretty nasty. Wouldn't necessarily consider like the Russian list at like a time like this as overly shooty, but no, they can engage for sure at long range, and then let that infantry do work when they get close. We have, now getting into the cavalry, here's some really good stuff too. So Russian noble heavy cavalry, remember up above, half our cavalry has to be this. No special rules for these guys, but clocking in at an even 30 points for a heavy cavalry is pretty solid. We'll have some special rules here in a minute, but you can't go wrong with just a normal heavy cavalry unit, especially at a good price like that. Now, there are some more fancy things we can bring in here. We have German or Polish knights, heavy cavalry with lances. So these guys are going to hit a little bit harder, and we're paying a 3-point cost for that added benefit. Now, we can spend even more to make these guys a little bit more elite. Not the keyword elite here, but more that we want to make them cataphracts, and that's going to give them stubborn. But we are paying 4 points for that. So ultimately 37 points for a unit of that. But the fact, again, that we can have multiples of these as long as we have enough nobles is pretty cool. Those are going to be our super elite shock troops, really. Punch some holes in the enemy lines, hopefully, get around, start doing flanking and rear charges and stuff. And really, if we can time it right and organize it right, if we can punch through with our heavy cavalry like this and then let the opponent just grind themselves down on the heavy infantry, and really the heavy infantry hopefully will win out in a lot of these cases, and just you got the opponent fighting these guys from the front, and then the cavalry getting around to the flanks and rear is going to be a deadly combination if we can pull that stuff off. But wait, there's more. We get a little bit of light cavalry and some mercs here. So Turkic mercenary or Hungarian allied light cavalry with spears and or javelins and bows fielded a small unit. So again, another unit that can do a little bit of everything. We're not going to expect much in a fight from these guys. So if they're going to be engaging, right, light cavalry, we want to try and ideally fight other like light units that aren't going to throw much against us. So ideally, they were going to hunt skirmishers and other stuff like that. We do get another 2 for long range. These guys are going to give us feigned flight. Always cool to have that. 21 points, all pretty standard stuff for a unit that does this. One last unit, though, and here's where it's back up to being a little bit more expensive. This is that mixed unit that we talked about above. Mixed ranks of Russian noble cavalry with spears and Turkic mercs light cavalry with javelins and bows. So an interesting, weird combination here, almost kind of coming out to roughly like a medium cavalry stat line, right? And it's an interesting mishmash of 2 different units in one. So we get heavy cavalry with light cavalry, and ultimately leading us to medium cavalry, more or less. So 8-6, 3-2, but more importantly, we get yet another cavalry unit that's going to do just fine in fighting, right? Not a problem there. Plenty of dice. We're still going to engage at range. long and short, of course, but and again, another important long-range unit. But the downside on this one, we're still going to pay 30 points, but we are effectively medium cavalry as far as the save goes. So if we're going to engage, we need to make sure that we hopefully win that fight pretty quickly, right? We don't want to fight something that's going to throw a ton of dice back at us and maybe get stuck in. But a good backup unit if we're just bored of running multiples of these, or we just want to run something that's kind of interesting and unique and cool to model too, right? You got great modeling opportunities there with painting with heavy and light cavalry mixed into one unit. And then we round everything off leadership-wise with Leadership 8 for this, which is, again, pretty good stuff here. We're not dealing with 7, which would certainly be pretty tough to always deal with there. That doesn't make sense that we would have a 9 here. There's no special characters, really. So Leadership 8 is going to be just fine. Again, an interesting list. Does everything. We're not necessarily overloaded with units with special abilities. We have some stuff where it counts. We have a lot of cheap options, too, but also just really a list that's grounded on fantastic infantry for what it is, and also some fantastic cavalry. And again, we have the ability here to go pretty much even across the board, like half cavalry, half infantry, or some variations of that if we don't want to lean too hard into one side. We really could go super in-depth on infantry and do really well with this and just have like those couple of units of shock cavalry, or we could go just again the other end and do that and just have a little bit of basic infantry. But I think this list really will be nice if it's blended somewhere in that range of like maybe 60-40 one way or the other, and maybe not further spread than that, closer to half and half. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So let us know, guys, if you've played early Russians at all under Hail Caesar rules and how you've gone about organizing your list. Love to hear from you. Again, be sure to check out that link in the description if you want to support the channel. Like and subscribe, and we'll have more Hail Caesar for you guys soon.